and welcome to Forbes India Pathbreakers with me, Neha Bothra. My guest on the show is Zia Mody, who takes us through her journey of 45 years from being one of the few women barristers in court to becoming India's most iconic corporate lawyer. We talk about corporate governance and we put the spotlight on how many blue chip companies are going about succession planning. We'll talk about all this and more on today's edition of Pathbreakers. Stay tuned. Zia, thank you so much for joining us on Forbes India Pathbreakers. It's so good to have you on the show.
Pleasure.
45 years ago, you were the only woman barrister in the courtroom. Today, you are India's best-known corporate lawyer. How would you describe the journey?
I don't think I was the only one, but one of the very few in the beginning. And I think the journey has been for over 40 years now. It's been a lot of ups, more ups than downs. It's difficult to morph from a junior arguing counsel whose only mission was to win that particular brief, then starting with a small band of 12 people and the firm now growing to 750 lawyers with different practice areas, especially now known as right up there for M&A, private equity, and many other fields of practice. So it's been a step-by-step journey, some accelerated at times, some more stable, but basically something I've enjoyed along the way.
So, as one of the few women fighting cases in the courtroom, what was the experience like? Was it intimidating at some level?
So certainly in the beginning it was intimidating because you just saw men all around you. And how do you get noticed and how do you get recognized? And how do you not get dismissed by just being a young girl in the profession? So a lot more work, a lot more preparation, a lot more conscientiousness, a lot more nervousness, a lot more paranoia, everything added to the mix so that when you performed, you were at your best. And you worked with several seniors who recognized the effort you put in, who valued the relief that you gave them because you had read every line and they didn't have the time to read every line. It wasn't easy. It took 5 or 6 years. But then finally, I came on par with my peers who were men and never forgot the lessons of the same thing: harder work, better preparation, and passion.
What about the moral compass? What limit is the limit beyond which you are not ready to go?
The truth. So the truth is the truth. You can't lie. You can't lie to the judge. You can't lie. You're an officer of the court. You do your best. You try to navigate. You try to nuance. You try to downplay the bad facts against you. You try to push up the good facts in your favor. And ultimately, it's up to the judge. You can't lose every case. You can't win every case. So you just have to do your best.
What did you do when you did not win a case?
I went in appeal. I tried there.
But often you know that the odds are stacked against you. What then?
Often the odds are not stacked against me. I do less litigation now. But if you are strategic in your thinking, if you are mindful on how you want to take this action versus that action, you anticipate what the other side will do. You're more purposive in your navigation of the court. You're all right. If you have just a terrible case, you have a terrible case. But if you have a half-decent case, you should be able to turn it into a good one.
As a corporate lawyer, what do you think has changed in India Inc.? What are 2 or 3 things that strike you as very different?
They're much more focused on being more careful. Their risk assessment level, which was very high, is now moderate to low. They do not want to be before the regulator. They don't want their name on the front page for the wrong reasons. Want to have a higher value in their stock price because of good governance. Honesty pays, simple. And I think a lot of the independents on the board are also important. They don't want to get caught in any regulatory crossfire. So they also control the governance piece much more than they did before.
So last year, I think close to 2,000 independent directors saw their term come to an end. And this was a good opportunity for many companies to actually overhaul governance practices, to tighten the screws, make the boards more independent, have more female representation. Is that something you saw last year?
I think that, a lot of people worry about being independents just for fear of being the gateway between the company and the regulator. Because the easiest person to ask for an explanation is the independent director. And frankly, he's not in that good a position to give an explanation as the management. So he struggles. If he asks for too much information, he's interfering. If he asks for too little information, he's negligent. So there's a very fine balance for independent directors. And from a monetary point of view also, it's not, you don't get paid that much for that sort of responsibility and accountability. I think training of people to become independent directors should increase. I think independent directors, the promoters should accept that they have a voice and that they can speak and they will be listened to because they've chosen them as independents. And I think in the next 10 years, we will see much more of a shift.
There's been a lot of scrutiny around the role of independent directors. This was particularly heightened after the Satyam scam 15, 16 years ago. How do you think corporate governance has changed since then? I ask so because some of the blue chip companies have had big governance issues. Is the role of the independent director not important in such cases?
You can't keep attacking these poor independent directors. How much do you want them to do? They can't spend 24/7 reading volumes of papers that otherwise management has to explain to them. So I think that if we overburden them, we will lose more. And we don't want to lose more. So government has come out with a set of laws in most statutes which says that as an independent director, if you can prove that you are not participating in the wrongdoing or that you did not neglectfully pick up the problem, you're okay. So they have cover. So all they have to do is be diligent.
Look at the kind of ownership structures we have, where you have very complex webs of ownership. There's cross-holding, opaque multiple layers. How has that really changed with more focus on governance?
I think that's a bit too negative today. I think that with the regulations brought out by SEBI and RBI, you have to disclose the ultimate beneficial owner. The opaque three triangle companies don't work anymore. You have to get to the heart of the human being who's behind it. And people are disclosing. Indian companies, like other emerging markets, have a high promoter holding generally. And the way I look at it is that that is not a bad thing. That means they have more skin in the game. They are more vested in the growth and value of the company. What you have to be watchful for in these cases, which again SEBI has done, is to make sure the related party transactions are at arm's length, they are disclosed, they go through the audit committee, they pass muster. But as long as those regulations are honored in spirit, and I think frankly most of the listed companies are scared of doing anything to the contrary. You definitely see better governance, definitely see better disclosure. And you have your proxy advisors who are busy picking at you if you do something wrong. So that's another safeguard.
In your interaction with many of these foreign investors, what do you pick up? Is there optimism?
I think they like India. They think they can make money in India. They think it's a bit painful to do business in India. Geopolitical situations will always override what they think of India. If America is better off, they'll go to America. If China is better off, they'll go to China. But I think nobody can ignore India now. The stock market is good. It's frothy. It has its ups and downs, but it's still good. Good valuations. People have made money in exits. So it's fine. Markets are down, but they're still coming down to possibly what is more realistic a valuation than before.
Indeed. So that part of the piece is something which investors are excited about. How do they look at the implementation of environmental laws at many Indian companies? Each company wants to have a green roadmap where they want to be greener and cleaner going forward. Based on your interactions with companies, is this something that they are focusing upon?
Some are committed, some are not so committed. It depends. Obviously, we've seen a huge spike in green energy, investment in green energy, etc., etc. But I wouldn't say we've gone all out for climate change. And the truth is, we probably can't. We're so dependent on fossil fuel that whilst the government has set ambitious goals, it will take a lot of private sector money to achieve that. So let's see.
You know, in your book, you wrote about the Vishaka judgment as one of the most important judgments passed in India. Is there more to be done when it comes to prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace for women?
I think the law is in place. I think the real question is how much are women willing to speak out? And what do they think the consequences will be if they speak out? Will they become the victim? And that is, I think, still a struggle. Do they quietly slip away? They make a complaint. How seriously does it get taken? Some companies take it very seriously. Some companies try and hush it up. Sometimes the woman just says, how can I stay in this place anymore? It doesn't stay anonymous for too long. But the fact that the law is in place and the fact that you can do something about it is very empowering.
Are there loopholes that need to be fixed to ensure better implementation and also help women speak out without the fear of backlash?
Difficult. It depends on the leadership. Some are very supportive. Some are still to grow to be very supportive. But it's much better than before. Much better than before. At least there's a fear that I can report you.
Now that there are more women leaders, even in many of the family-run businesses, do you think that is something which is also prompting more equality in the workplace when it comes to pay, when it comes to just respect, when it comes to authority? Is that playing a role?
To some extent, for sure. Because women leaders will obviously understand the problem of women more than the men. And so the tone from the top is always very critical. How does a woman deal with other women down the organization? What sort of flexibility can she be offered? What sort of assurance can she be given that her career path is not going to go for a toss? I think women leaders can help, but male leaders can help even more because they are the ones in majority. And if they become male champions of change and invest in their women, like I see a lot of them investing much more in their daughters, it's a good sign.
And does it translate into the workplace as well when it comes to managing the workforce?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, AZB, for example, has 37% of its partnership is women, which is the main thing, partnership, because they've stayed the course. Juniors, you always have more women than men. They drop out, unfortunately. But the more you can understand, and it's very bespoke, what each woman needs, and the men understand, that's when you're getting to a better level.
You would have interacted with the first generation, the second generation founder as well. What's the big change that you notice in your interactions?
I think the older promoters lived their life for the company and went home to sleep. I think the second generation doesn't think they have to do that. They enjoy the work, but they also want a life other than work. Sometimes there's conflict between the older and the younger because of that.
In what areas?
Well, just, I don't need to work 24/7. I can do this much and then, go back and spend time with my family. It's a work in progress. Even some second generations are very committed, but less so, by and large, than the patriarch, because he founded the business.
And while many of the second gen leaders would have inherited the enterprise, which is in a good place, etc., but it's a very hyper competitive environment, of course, very challenging as well. How prepared is the second generation to lead companies in this landscape?
Again, it depends. Those who have worked alongside their fathers, absorbed all the learnings, are in good shape. The ones that have studied abroad, worked for a while abroad, come back later. Maybe they've lost a few years of that learning. But I think every father would like his son or daughter to be beside him.
Yes.
So it's the time that the kids are willing to spend, not the other way around.
So, I've been interacting with some of the second gen leaders in these companies, and one of them said something very interesting. They said there's a lot of gaslighting that happens because they are not willing to give us ownership, control. They still want to be the ones calling the shots, and that becomes a bit of a disadvantage. Is this something you encounter as well in your meetings?
Human nature, right? Because the elder always thinks he knows better. The younger guy doesn't get a chance to experiment. If he makes mistakes, God knows if they are accepted or criticized. But again, if you give somebody a separate P&L to experiment with, accept the mistakes, take it as learnings, and the younger generation is willing to seek guidance from the older generation and have a conversation rather than say, just leave me, I'll do it alone. I think that's what will make it work better.
In terms of strategy, where are the areas of difference? Is it that the younger generation wants to focus more on global expansion, diversification, whereas perhaps the older generation would be wanting to consolidate and retain leadership? Is that an area of difference?
Not really. I think the younger generation may want to go out into different fields, which are not the traditional steel making, cement making. Maybe they want startups, maybe they want cricket teams.
Family offices?
Family offices, but it's a good thing. Because if you have wealth and if you invest it wisely, that's a great asset to have, to learn how to invest. But I think that, real industry, where you had to put your boots on the ground, walk the plant, see where the bolts are, that was a gift that belonged to earlier times. I think right now, the younger generation, not saying everyone, but many of them just don't want to do that. They want to do something which is more in tune with their peers, more in tune with their own thinking. They think that all these functions could be outsourced quite efficiently. And so they think in a very different way. They like to experiment. They like to dabble, not in a bad way. But they don't want to be hamstrung by their father and grandfather's guardrails.
Are you very confident that they will lead the company, or does it make you wonder that the father worked so hard and a professional management would be a better recourse for the company board to consider?
I think almost in every company, a professional management is better, even if you have a promoter. How much can a promoter do as the company grows larger and larger? How much can one or two people do? And then, you have inter-say family fights, which destroys value, which is also not a good thing, which probably could be avoided if you have professional management. So I think regardless of promoter ownership or dominance, if you like, professional management is something even the promoters have come to recognize. The second generation has come to recognize because there's just that much to be done. And as long as the direction is clear, it's okay. The values are clear. It's okay.
Recently, there was a comment that the second generation should be more hands-on with building businesses rather than investing in family offices, investing their time in family offices. Do you agree with that?
Not everybody does. Some invest in family offices. Some youngsters work in the business. You can't generalize, you see. I think that some family offices have proved very successful. It doesn't mean if you have a family office, you still can't be in the business.
Yeah.
You can do both.
When you have 2, 3 kids and you need to plan succession and you need to decide who will be the first among equals, how do families navigate that succession challenge?
That's a difficult one, normally. And I think it's difficult because there are awkward conversations which would need to be had. That is why sometimes you don't have those conversations and just leave it in your will and then forget about it till you die. The other way to be to split up businesses and to see that each one gets his own or her own to manage and control, and with guidance from the patriarch or the matriarch, whoever she or he may be. So sometimes splitting the businesses is good for the business. If you look at the Bajajes, they split their businesses well. Everyone's happy. So it's a question of thinking through, understanding where the friction points are, the chemistry between the cousins or the siblings, and to deal with it, and to make way for everyone to shine in a way that even if you're not the best and the greatest at your job, you at least have a respectful place in the organization and you have your fair share of ownership.
Are companies beginning to think through this family run businesses? Many blue chip companies will be seeing this transition in the coming years. How are they looking at the succession challenge going forward?
I think as you see more and more of them happening, more and more generations are open to it. As I say, it's about difficult conversations. People are willing to have those conversations. And now very often you see the mother also in the mix, which is great. And she's looking out for her girl child. Earlier, the thought process was, we'll settle the daughter well and we'll give the boy the business. That's not necessarily the case now. I think that the women want to be in the business. They're good at the business. And I think that from a family succession point of view, much more thought being given than 5 years ago, because you have to.
Recently, for example, what we saw in the Lodha family, the dispute between the brothers, how does one avoid that? The mother, of course, had to step in and pacify the brothers. How can families avoid such situations where it becomes bitter, hostile?
Communication. And, each one feeling they've been treated fairly. Now, one may outshine the other by dint of performance. And that may create some hostility in the other. But that's when the family steps in to ease it out. If you say the mother stepped in, then she was the most powerful.
What is fair in this kind of a settlement? It's very
discretionary, isn't it? It depends on how much you performed, what your results have been, how much you've done for the family, what is your market value, what are your future plans, what is your fundraising ability compared to your siblings, everything. But I think as long as the family supports the correct initiatives of the children and gives them a fair chance, I think then the children should be able to shine on their own or accept that they can't shine.
You've been privy to so many such matters in some of the biggest of India's companies. What has your advice always been to them?
You have corporate constitutions, you have family constitutions, you have situations where people document who will manage what sort of business. You talk about ownership, and if that has to be sold between the family, you talk about when, how long, what discounts, how much deferral of the price. All that is now quite common because people have learned from mistakes.
When it comes to splitting businesses, it's a big risk for shareholders. Many of these blue chip companies will now see a transition, and we don't know what the outcome of that would be. If we look at global examples, there have been varying outcomes of success. How should investors look at this period in India?
They should look at who the youngster is that they're backing and whether they think that, he will succeed. See, if it's a listed company, it's very simple. You just sell. You walk with your feet. But if it's a large conglomerate, it's very difficult for one man or two women to pull it down because it has a force of its own, right? It's been doing well for so long. It has its professional management, and they are companies which have given great value. So overnight, unless there's a death or something, the patriarch or matriarch is not just going to hand over the reins one day and go and play golf. It'll have to be a smooth succession transition.
Who are you backing in the new lot? Who are you very excited about? Who do you think is the dark horse in the race?
I genuinely think all the young generations are good guys, and good girls. I think that they just need to be closer to their business parents. They need to understand the business even better, although they are certainly getting into it. Because they also know it's their legacy. I mean, why would they, let go of their legacy? It makes no sense. So it's the amount of time that they are willing to invest to learn, to grow, to communicate, and to get the respect of their people around them. That they will say, yes, he's learning, he's trying, he's making it, he's listening to us, he's consulting. I think they're
Who
all
has
good.
impressed you the most?
I don't think I have a name actually. I don't think I have a name. I like all of the young ones. They're all in different degrees trying hard. And I don't think that anyone will be a failure unless they start fighting for rubbish.
But do we learn from history, Zia? Because one would imagine that, having seen so many family breakdowns in the past,
Some do, some don't.
like Bharat Forge, for instance, just to take an example, we keep hearing of these family feuds
But
happening. And
they will fight. Ultimately, there'll be a solution. They shouldn't fight. But that's very simple to say. Sometimes human nature takes over, not just Bharat Forge, ego, hubris. Who does he think she is? Who does she think he is? I mean, all that nonsense. It's all about equations within the family and how the family has managed to keep the conversations going such that there's mutual respect, even though there may not be equal competence, without putting people down.
That's a challenge because eventually there can be one CEO and
Yeah, there can be one managing director, one joint managing director. They can rotate if they are allowed to give a chance of 5 years each. They can decide to take the role of a non-managing director if they believe that it's like the Murugappa group. They used to rotate very well. And everybody accepted the new leader and worked with him. But ultimately, as a human being, you have to realize how competent you are compared to your peers and your family members. And you have to accept that the best should lead the group or the bestest of the best.
Zia, when you take up cases, and you've taken up so many, very often when you're striking deals, for instance, it's not so much about the valuation, but what you said, it's about human nature, about ego. How do you handle these instances where, as a lawyer, you can be very objective, you can see both the sides? How do you bring both on the same page to the table when they are absolutely in different directions?
It's difficult sometimes. You try to shout at both of them
Really?
sometimes. Take them into separate rooms and try and counsel them. It's not easy. But you end up with family settlements. So it happens.
How do family settlements happen?
Each one is unhappy. Nobody's happy in a family settlement. You normally give the piece of the business that the person is driving to that person. You offset the value if it is a higher value. You deal with real estate and give parts of it away. Deal with shares and give parts of it away. You look at the brand name and see how it can be used. So there are very different components to the family settlement. Non-competes. Sometimes you don't do this business, I won't do this business. Stuff like that.
After doing such settlements, Zia, when you go back home, do you go back with a headache? How do you unwind after such intense conversations and discussions?
I dwell on it. I sometimes worry about the next day. But at the end of the day, you're trying to do your best. You're trying to just bring peace to what would otherwise be a fractioned family. So that gives you some satisfaction. Ultimately, when you sign, some take 2 years, some take 5 years.
And it's not always the siblings. We are seeing more of divorce proceedings happen in India. Is this something that corporate families are also talking about, kind of trying to ring fence such outcomes by having certain provisions in place to protect the value of their business?
I think they would look to the children, not the grandchildren, to make sure that if there is a divorce, unfortunately, at least the grandchildren are protected, or the ownership between the husband and the wife is sorted out, or there's some settlement made for that. By and large, the wife gets the short end of the stick. So that may be a wealthy short end of the stick or a poor short end of the stick. Lawyers love doing all this. But I think that everybody would be vested in seeing that the grandchildren would be happy or the children of the divorced couple would be happy. So people would shift attention to that and say, okay, this marriage is done. So now let's go forward and see where the next generation can benefit from.
We are seeing a very different global economy. There's volatility. We are talking about tariffs. Indian companies are in a sweet spot. But how do you think they are trying to ring fence their business, guard their leadership position, have pricing power? Because there's so much disruption all around.
If they need to sell off a non-core asset, they will sell it off. If they need to buy a strategic asset, they'll do an M&A. If they feel there's a market where because of the labor arbitrage they can send their goods, they'll export. It's business as usual. They have to think where they can grow, where they can make money, where they need to shrink, where they need to divest. It's happening every day.
We saw a lot of global acquisitions happen earlier, not as much now. What's the reason for that? Are they focusing more on a thriving domestic economy? Are there other reasons?
I think a lot of the companies went into over leverage. So what was the point of buying overseas assets? I think some of the overseas assets were successful, some were not. Some of the overseas acquisitions have been divested, actually. So now you will go abroad for technology. You will go abroad if there's something which is in deep distress. But otherwise, I think people are focused on a very large domestic market at home. So that's what they're looking for, spending.
So the funding environment has improved.
From the
Last
private
1 year?
equities, yes. From the banks, I think still slow. For infrastructure projects, still slow. Developmental funding has not come as much as it should. The government has had to step in a lot to achieve the infrastructure that it has. But foreign investors, foreign strategics and private equity are at full play. It's up and down, no? Because sometimes your fund is over, you're busy raising a new fund. Sometimes the LPs are saying, don't invest more, we want exits first, give us our money back. So it's how the cycle is running. But by and large, there's interest.
There is a lot of dry powder on the table, but we don't see as many deals happening because, of course, there's a focus on profitability in certain sectors. What part of the cycle would you say we are when it comes to private equity and venture capital?
I would say private equity is hugely interested in India still. Venture capital had slowed down a bit because of some scams that went wrong. But we are seeing them return. They're doing more diligence on the promoters. They're more careful about what statements they're given. They don't throw money like they used to, but they're back.
Are they excited about the exits at current valuations, or is there going to be a markdown?
There's huge excitement in the sense that you just take an NSE stock. I mean, it's going to make gold for everybody. You look at some of the startups that are doing reverse mergers coming back from Singapore. They're coming here to take advantage of the Indian IPO market. So I think everybody's excited about their exits and they're willing to wait also.
These are mostly exits via IPOs or even secondary transactions?
Both. Some private funds, private equity are willing to buy secondaries. Some private equity is saying, wait, we'll get a better pop in the IPOs. It's a very mixed bag. You've seen the market.
Is there some degree of caution though, given what's happening in the world?
Just that, how will the geopolitical situation affect India? What will the tariffs do to us? What will Trump do to us? What will we do to ourselves? But other than that, who can complain with a 6 to 7% growth? Spending should increase. Inflation seems to be coming in control, especially food inflation. There's a new governor, there's a new SEBI chief. The government is committed to infrastructure. The youth continue to want their mobiles, access the world through that.
Yes.
So we're in a sweet spot. I think it's ours to lose.
And of course, there's a new investing theme that's artificial intelligence. Every company has artificial intelligence one way or the other. Tell me a bit about how, in the legal fraternity, AI is being looked upon. How are you using artificial intelligence at AZB and Partners?
So we are, like many other firms, testing demos of 2, 3 artificial intelligence firms that are catering to law firms. We're in demo mode right now. We'll see what works. And then we'll get a cohort of people to form the core committee and then see what to do.
Is the fear justified that it could replace analysts, legal analysts? Is this all just an exaggeration, or is there some merit of truth to it?
I think the basic run-of-the-mill stuff can be done by AI. I think when there is a judgment call to be taken, you can't replace the human, especially in a law firm, because you'll ultimately have to answer to the client for the wrong call. And if you rely on a robot, how will you do that? So I think it's still a way away.
How should young students who are interested in entering the legal ecosystem, how should they prepare, keeping in mind that these are some changes that they will have to work with?
They should basically be interested in technology, not shy away from it. Be more embracing of the advantages that the technology brings to you. Save time in doing so without compromising the quality, and being much more tech savvy than we were.
To end the conversation, I want to pick on something you said earlier, which was about the role women play as leaders, about what they bring to the table. We don't have that many women CEOs, despite the talent. How do we address this?
In time, to let more women speak out, see other women as lead models, get the support of their family. Culture plays a very important part. Japan is terrible, poor things. The women really have so much more to go. I think we've done much better in the last 20 years than we had done in the 20 years before. You're an example. Normally, I would have had a male interviewing me. Now, it's obvious it'll be a female, right? And you've worked at it, and you've been passionate about it, and you don't want to let go of it. And maybe your grandmother would never have even thought that way. So it's the education of women, for sure, the mindset of the family to support the girl child, and the passion of the girl child herself, that I want to be something, I want to be known for something. And it makes no difference that I'm a girl or a boy.
Would you do anything differently, Zia, if you could go back in time?
Well, a couple of things. I would have spent more time with my family as a young mother. I would maybe not have dreamt of such a large firm where people issues are always issues that trouble you. I would have enjoyed maybe just being a very specialized counsel on very cutting edge matters. But all in all, if I look back, am I happy? I'm happy.
Work-life balance is something which always comes up. Is there work-life balance at all?
No.
There can be harmony, yes, but balance,
Difficult.
how have you worked around work and life?
I've worked. I've sacrificed my family, which is what I regret.
You regret it.
Of course.
And that's the price we have to pay.
Well, many of us do. Not all of us have to. Many of us do.
At the end, is it worth paying that price?
That's up to each one of us, right? Some decide it's not worth it. Some decide to go for it. But you always live with guilt.
It's for men and women, or more for women?
More for women, because they are naturally supposed to be around the child that they are rearing. That's just the way it is. And the child looks more to the mother than the father, which is human nature. So I think there is a little war.
And yet we talk about 70-hour weeks and 90-hour weeks.
I don't
how
think,
does all of it fit in?
But all that comment is to, be taken with a pinch of salt, because if I had to work 100 hours a week, I would work 100 hours a week. If I don't have to work 100 hours a week, I'm not going to create work for 100 hours a week. And if everyone is working 100 hours a week, you need more people, so get more people and reduce it. Otherwise, you'll get a burnout. It's not that difficult.
Zia, thank you so much for your time. It was great speaking with you. Thank you so much for being on
Most welcome.
Pathbreakers.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.